seen with hundreds of millions of people involved, you know, in the forms of wars and all this other kind of crap over time. I mean, the hundreds of millions of people. And of course, you find that, you know, as soon as you reach a certain threshold in conspiracies, it starts leaking out. And that's why the government, the master of conspiracies and criminal double dealing, has sections within their operation that are designed to deal with the leaking of the information. And so they would write articles like this supposed one from the scientist who's anonymous, blah, blah, blah. And they would put these articles out there to predispose your mind to follow certain trails when you come across certain information. You will notice one big thing about this article if you go and read it. It's being touted on a number of the conspiracy sites now. And if you go and read it, you'll know it does one thing there. And go through and read the article. You'll find out that it starts off talking about chemtrails and the chemtrail flu and all of this kind of stuff and the secrets being discovered, and then very rapidly drops that as a subject and redirects you back to influenza vaccines and spends all the time talking about the vaccines and very little time about the chemtrails at all. Barely mentioned. No mention of the mechanisms involved or any of this. But so it's a distraction and a disinfo piece in the sense that it wants to redirect your attention from chemtrails over to flu vaccines. And why this is the case, I don't know. But that is the goal, because they don't really discuss in that article how the chemtrails as a mechanism are being used. There's no discussion of the chemtrails at all, really. And yet it purports to be an article about the linkage between chemtrails and the ultimate plot of depopulation and how they want to do it to the U.S. There's also no real discussion about how chemtrails are a planet-wide phenomena. They are not limited to the United States. So there's all kinds of stuff left out that really points to the mind that wrote this being ignorant or deliberately occulting of information, including the point of the article, and it's a redirect. So in my mind, it's a disinfo piece put out for some specific reason, likely to get you to not think about chemtrails in specific ways. Why that should be, I don't know. You know, their goals on this are kind of interesting to speculate on, but very difficult to arrive at any kind of a conclusion. Now, the chemtrail flu itself, I think, actually is a valid phenomenon. It certainly exists as a condition. I don't think that the chemtrail flu is the introduction of a viral or a bacterial condition. There may be viral or bacterial opportunistic infections that arise as a result of the condition that comes from the chemtrails. And that condition basically is stress of the lungs from having to breathe and process your oxygen through all of the small particulates that are rolling through our space in these huge clouds. Now, you have to understand that the chemtrails, when they spray them up there that day, float down over the course of, say, the next 17, 18 hours. So I've noticed that I would see heavy spraying throughout the morning, and then that night, especially in spring when the weather conditions were just right, I could go on out with my night vision goggles, and you could see the chemtrail fog, this electro-smoggy fog stuff that is not visible with the naked eye. You could see it under specific light conditions at a specific time, and it's usually around 8:30 through 9 in spring, early spring. And you would see these clouds that would be easily 50, 60 feet high, and they were like waves. And you would see the wind disturb this floating mass that you're breathing. You have to understand that as you look at it, it's all around you. It's everywhere. And you can see that it's also sort of trailing down from the chemtrails. If you happen to catch it with the light from the sun, as the Earth's rotating away from the sun, and you see this sort of angle issue, you can actually see the light creep down to a certain extent, and you see the stuff coming down out of the chemtrails. And it forms this mass that we're all breathing. And so this chemtrail flu, I think, in my opinion anyway, is more of a condition that exists as opposed to the introduction of a disease state by an organism. Now, it is true we are all in a disease from having to breathe through this crap. And who knows what it's actually doing internally to us. There's just no way of telling. Very sophisticated if its goal was to simply get us to succumb to the flu. As a cost-effective method, I mean, government's not particularly cost-effective. Their goal is, one of their goals is to waste as much money as possible for the benefit of the people that support government. However, government in the way of big projects like the chemtrails sort of thing, they don't use giant projects like that to swat flies. They don't develop missiles to swat flies. So because they have to sell these ideas all the way up the chain of command, and the chain of command always has certain cost considerations. No matter how nefarious the plot is, they have to raise the money to support it. So even if they know they've got to spend bazillions of dollars with chemtrails, they're not going to spend the bazillions of dollars that way just to get a better influenza attack on us. It'd be much easier, much more cost effective to simply have a small fraction of that money put into the bacteria or viral influenza agents themselves to make them that much better. And so the whole scheme and the plan and all of this that the guy writes about, I think, is spurious, and I do not think that it's a valid argument about what chemtrails are out there for. I'm not saying I know what chemtrails are out there for, but I do know that we're breathing through them. This brings up the issue. This is why I recommended, if you have the tolerance for it and so on, astragalus root. Olagus root. It's a powder, and it's an herb, and you can take it as a tonic. You can take it for long periods of time, but it's very harsh on the system, and you cough a lot. I do take it myself every 2 or 3 or 4 days based on how much exposure I'm getting out in the boat shed and how much chemtrail spraying is going on. I have noticed the chemtrail flu is affecting all kinds of people around me, even those that are in denial about the chemtrails themselves. And there's been an uptick in the amount of disease and degraded individuals, degraded health of individuals in our local environment. Not to say that this is an effective way to depopulate. So again, I just don't buy the guy's argument that way. But there certainly are debilitating effects from the chemtrails. Now the approach of cleaning your lungs, I also do misogi, which is purification breaths here every morning. And so frequently you'll hear me coughing and snorting and blowing my nose and running around with wheezing and all of this kind of stuff during my immediacy data intelligence reports, because I have to get up very early in the morning to do those because of just the nature of the processing. And it relates to the fact that I do these purifications, and there's a lot of chemtrail crud to cough up, but it does work. You can aid your lungs significantly in this process. And basically my goal here is to stay as healthy as I can, as long as I can, and hopefully get to the point where I can be one of the people that will help gut that last banker, haul his intestines out, and use it to strangle the last pope. I can't say that anymore because it looks like we're looking at him, but strangle the last politician, and as we then use their bones to beat to death the people that own the politicians. I just want to see what's going on, and there's a lot of people that have big debts that are owing, and karma may need some help. So I just want to live long enough to get through that and see what's going to pop out on the other side, because we're in a situation where this cannot continue for that much longer. The daily cost of chemtrails is sapping the global economy. It's affecting the breakaway civilization, probably is inherently interlocked with the breakaway civilization. There may indeed be space alien components to this, in the sense that this electro-smog may interfere with or allow the government in some way to do battle with these other frequency beings that are shading over through here, that kind of thing. So who really knows? I do know that you've got to get through it, though, and so you have to recognize that it's an ongoing condition, and deal with it as a realistic adult. And that's the same as all of the other evils of our society. The degradation of the food body, the Monsantoism, the global push towards genetically modified everything for some damn reason. I don't know why they're doing that. All of these things have to be looked at as inimical to our lives, and we have to look at them realistically and deal with them. So in my way of thinking, as a martial artists, you start with yourself and make yourself as fit as possible for the battles you've got to undertake. And we got a lot of battles ahead of us, a lot of challenges. And so we need to be very, very, very fit. Unfortunately, some of the things they're doing are attempting to make us unfit. And I would hate being a kid these days. A child these days not being taught how to strengthen their mind to overcome the blandishments of advertisements and select their own diet. They're doomed. They're doomed to, you know, obesity, short lifespans, and so on. So, like I say, I would hate to be a kid. I at least came from a generation where there was some level of intention on training your mind, and without that, you don't have anything. You're just subjected to those that have willpower and that are running the system. A couple of things about the staying fit and all of that, especially as old people here. A lot of old farts running around like myself. Turns out that when you get into exercise, you'll discover a real key factor here has to do with the lymph system, and how the lymph system, there's twice as much fluid in general as you have in the blood system. But the lymph system in the human body has no heart to pump it. It relies entirely on the pumping action that's generated by your muscles contracting in order to move the lymph fluid through its system. The lymph system is intimately connected with the meridian system of the acupuncture fame, as well as intimately connected with the flow of chi or other energy through the chakras. And the lymph system has these little valves in it that are every so often, and then there's larger valves at these juncture points, just basically like your veins and your arteries, only much more intensely valved, because it relies on a pressure building up and sort of popping the valves to get the lymph to move from one section to the next and cause the whole thing to go. So being sedentary is not good. The longer you sit, the closer you are dying, because you need to get the valves moving in your lymph system. Our bodies were designed for particular kinds of activity. So those people that you see out running miles, you know, the endurance kind of guys, that's not a good way to go. You'll note a lot of these individuals die. They just keel over instantly after exercise one day. Jim Fixx, the fellow who popularized in the 60s and 70s running and jogging and basically started all that trend, that's what happened to him. He just was running one day and stopped and fell over dead. It in no way, as near as anybody can tell, really aided his life to be an intense runner if the goal was to, you know, have longevity. But we know from a long history of how humans operate and secrets in the martial arts dojo that the real key to healthful living and longevity and this kind of thing comes down to heart rate variability. And so you see that, well, you'll see academics go to places like the Hunza valleys and the Villacumbra valleys in South America and all of this kind of longevity sites around the planet, and they'll say, oh, one of the common elements is these people live in these valley areas when they have to walk over the mountains, so they walk a lot. And that's true. You need to get up and walk a lot. The reason you need to get up and walk a lot is that it does pump the lymph system. Pumping the lymph through the system allows your body to detoxify. There's more of the detoxification going on in that system than there ever will be in your blood. So bear in mind your blood is very specific in what it's supposed to do, and the kinds of toxins it handles are also very specific. It's not intended to deal with the general crud that your body is constantly absorbing in our now super polluted world with Fukushimas all over and chemtrails raining down on us and nasty food and the toxins and other stuff from regular pollution, you know, car exhaust, that kind of crap, coal fire plants. All of the pollutants that we're exposed to continuously are amassing in our body, and the system that gets rid of it is the lymph system. And so the blood system rarely handles any of these long chain molecule kind of things that we get exposed to, or the sticky short chain molecules that you find in a lot of the basic acrylic plastics that we're exposed to these days. And then it would include some of the pseudo hormonal chemicals, because those are sticky molecules in how they're thought of. Anyway, in any event, without getting into the detail of the chemistry involved, to get rid of these things, you need to get your lymph system moving. And it's also a key element in weight loss. If you really want to